Cash stuffing, also known as the envelope system, is not a great way to manage your money or stay on top of your budget, even though it's one of the most popular ways on the internet. So, what is a better way of managing your system? What is wrong with this system? And perhaps most importantly, how do successful people actually manage their money? Because I've been a financial advisor, I've managed over $140 million. I've been on the other side of the table. I have seen these people's accounts in their transactions. So how did they manage their money, and why aren't enough people talking about it? Let's go ahead and break it down. So for those that may not know, the term cash stuffing is really the envelope system. Now, I had to kind of refresh myself because the envelope system is what I grew up talking about and what I knew of. And there is something a little interesting that has kind of changed in the last few years or so. But basically, it is taking your paycheck. So, for example, back in the day, you would get a physical check. You would take that to the bank and they would give you cash. You would take that cash and say, hey, look, I've got this much for gas, this much for groceries, this much for the light bill, this much for the car bill, this much for student loans, and whatever. You would physically put these in envelopes. Now, today, you can go on Amazon or you can go to your favorite finance influencer, me, but I don't sell cash envelopes, but you guys get it. Go to your favorite person or whoever and buy these envelopes and put physical cash in there and use that money to pay for those expenses. And there are some good things that have come from this envelope system or from this cash stuffing. So I'm going to cover the pros first because it ain't all bad, okay? I'm really just saying there's something better, okay? And there are some cons that you should know of. But first, again, the pros. Number one, if you are using this to really cut down on your expenses and just keep your spending under control, maybe you're trying to pay off some major debts, particularly credit cards, you might be onto something. In fact, there are studies that have shown, I've written this in my very, very first book, almost 10 years ago now, that studies have shown rather, that you can reduce your expenses anywhere between 20 to 30%. And that is because of two primary things. Number one, you see your money leaving not your account, but your hand, and it is more tangible. I look at my account, I'm looking at a number. Yeah, sure, it's $1,000, $1,500, $2 left, right? You see it, it's there, but you don't really connect to it except when it's in your hand, and it feels different. Like, hey, this is the last $2 I have for gas or whatever it's going to be. So you do connect with it a lot better when it is physically there. That math definitely clicks when all you got is $20 and then that burrito, whatever it's going to be, is 12. All right, look, we're going to have to make this work. Okay, so that's going to be a different type of story. So you pay attention to it a bit more. Also, there is the big bill theory. There are some studies that show this as well. For example, again, if you hand me $100 bill, and people who know me and have seen me in person know this, whether it's my birthday and I've done this, maybe since middle school, perhaps. I don't think people were giving me $100 bills back in middle school, but you guys, high school, college. If you gave me $100 bill, especially a $50, $100, or $2 bill, those do exist. My son got his first $2 bill for his kindergarten graduation last week. But if you gave me any one of those bills, I was holding on to them for dear life. And the reason was I didn't want to break them. I just did not want to break those big bills or those rare bills. Now, to me, a $50 bill is just rare. You just don't see them that often. Okay, now not as rare as a $2 bill for different reasons, but I just did not want to break a $100 bill. So I just held on to it, which means I was saving or holding on to money. But if you gave me a bunch of 20s, I'm not going to hold on to those in the same way. Just psychologically, they can be equal, right? But I just don't really treat them the same. You give me a whole bunch of 5s, I'm going to spend them 5s. I just am, right? You give me a bunch of 1s, I'm going to just spend them 1s. You give me a $100 bill, I'm like, I don't know if I really want to buy that the same way, but you gave me a 20, yeah, sure, I'll get it right now. So there are studies, again, that confirm that. So if you're using cash more often, you are going to hold on to those things a bit more. In some states, especially when I was in New York, there are some things that are just cheaper when you use cash. I would go and buy gas and it would say, hey, here's a credit card price. It's, 10, 5%, 3% higher. You use cash, things are a little less expensive. Now, I haven't been in New York for a few years now, actually since the pandemic, so I assume those things are the same. Y'all let me know in the comments. So again, from a spending perspective, you are likely to spend less when you use the cash stuffing system or the envelope system. It is more visual. Those things are true. I'm all for those things. But let's talk about the risk. And you have to weigh the benefits with the risk. I think the first one is obvious. It is more risky, okay? Because if you are, like, I don't think anybody smart is going to walk around with all of their cash envelopes walking around with them at all times, okay? Who needs to carry around the money they need for all their utilities, right? Or some of their other bills with them at all times? I think perhaps you're taking around your lunch money, right? And the money you may need for gas and some miscellaneous expenses. Sure. But let's say if that is a few $100s at a time, right? Well, if you left your purse on the train, if you had it unfortunately stolen, or you left it or lost it, and that money vanishes, then it is gone and there is no recourse for it. If something happens to my wallet and is primarily on a debit or credit card, I have some level of recourse. I have a PIN number to protect myself. If it is on a credit card, I can just report it as lost or stolen and just get that right back. I'm not liable for any miscellaneous transactions or fraudulent transactions rather. And this is not to say that credit cards and debit cards are just 100% better. This is not that type of conversation, but there are some protections to prevent, right, or protect me from something or someone stealing my money, right? And that is not the case if you're using the envelope system. That is something you do want to consider if you are doing that. And I think that is the space that you might want to lean on. There is something though to discuss though about decision fatigue and willpower. And I think this is the spot I don't think enough people talk about. What I've noticed in everybody's financial journey, and this has happened with me as well. When I started decades ago, which sounds crazy, but I started with the envelope system when I got into this space and I wanted to figure out how to manage my own money before I even had a credit card, right? Getting my allowance, all type of stuff, and like getting my first job. What did I do? How did I open my first bank account and my first savings and all kind of stuff, and like really move out on my own and start to make things work? If you are starting out, I think the envelope system is fine, but how you start is usually not how you finish, okay? And the main thing is, as you're making all of these decisions, there is a psychological fact called decision fatigue. The more decisions you make, the more tired that you get. The more tired that you get, the more mistakes you make, and the more erratic some of those decisions can get, and the more expensive some of those decisions can get. And things can get really out of whack. So for example, and these are small decisions, right, that start to add up over the day. You go to work is tough, figure out what to eat, figure out what to wear, and you do this all over and over and over again. And then you're sitting down, you're making these extra decisions on where to divide up this money, how much to spend. You're deciding, how much to put in this envelope and that envelope, and you keep doing this over and over and over again, every 2 weeks, every month, so on and so forth. And this is not automated. This is not automated. That is the key thing. And that's the thing that separates someone who stays in this very beginning, very novice phase, and someone who moves up into the expert phase. And that's the difference between someone who stays, again, in that novice phase and that person who hits that $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 portfolio and hits that $1 million range, and someone who really never blossoms and moves from point A to point B. Everybody has to start somewhere. So this isn't a shaming, right? This isn't downing the cash system or the cash stuffing or the envelope system. This is not that. Okay, what I am saying is start somewhere, but it's time to take those training wheels off when you are ready, right? And you need to move towards the automation. Okay, that is the key, because when I started to review the transactions of millionaires and we were setting up all these systems, I didn't have to see these people every day, right? We set up systems to make sure that their stuff was automated. My accounts are automated themselves. I don't sit here and I don't make my own investments, because I tell y'all, I check my accounts how many times per year? How many times per year do I check my investments? Twice. That's it. Twice. That's it. I just go in and say, hey, look, I like these investments. I don't like these. Let's switch these things up. I'll catch you back in December. June and December, they're the only times I need to check it, because everything else is automated. Every single week, Money goes in there, they invest in the same stuff I told you to invest in for the last 6 months. That's it. I don't need to sit back and say, based on how I feel today, this is what I need to go back and invest in. And maybe I don't need to invest in this and that and go back and forth. Because what happens is how you feel that day, right? Especially when it comes to the stock market, because you are anxious that day, because you had a great day or you didn't have a great day, you start to say, oh, I panic sold, right? Because a lot of stuff happened, the market happened, something fell, it was earnings, whatever it is, and you start to sell because things were not automated. Because they were not automated. When it comes to your budget, because gas prices were up or something like that, you took money out of one envelope, put it in another, things start to spiral, and now all your envelopes are messed up. Now you are stressed because of it, and your entire system starts to fall like a house of cards, and then you're spiraling and you have to start all over again. That stuff starts to get stressful because it is not automated. So the solution here, and the way that I do it, and there is someone I will point you to as a resource as well, is this. I like to do, and you guys have heard me talk about this before, but I'm going to give you a little spice on top of it, is a 50-30-20 rule, except that I use different banks. Now, what bank you want to use, we actually have a video on some top savings accounts that you can use right now. But what I like to do is I have a separate bank for my spending. So the money that I use to just spend on stuff, right, just for me, that just my miscellaneous spending goes to a separate bank. The money that I have for bills goes to a separate bank. The reason why I absolutely love having a separate bank account for my bills, I've been doing this since college, like since I graduated and like had my own apartment. So one of the best things I ever did was because I had that, and I knew that if I could arrange my 50-30-20 rule in a way where if bills are $2,000 a month and I can put in, let's say my income enough was like, let's say $2,500 or just $2,300, just enough to cover all the bills and just a little bit more, then the money went in there, I had enough to cover bills and just a little bit more, I never had to check the account again. All the stuff was on auto pay. I had just enough to cover and just a tiny bit more, I never have to check it again. Everything was on auto pay. That's it. And never have to check it, almost never, right? All the bills on auto pay. What else do I have to worry about? Nothing, because it will never go to zero because I'm not spending money out of that account, right? Now I'll review it to make sure there's no fraud or anything like that, but like I don't spend money out of that account because the money that I use for me is somewhere else. Because that is something that I know I had anxiety about when I was growing up, but also when I was managing my own money. Like, what happens if I spend too much and now I don't have enough for rent? What happens if I spend too much and then, I don't have enough for groceries or something like that? So what if I just split those two things apart? I don't have to worry about that. And it's not like a transfer thing. It's two completely different banks. As I use the wrong card, now I'm two completely different banks, two whole cards. Don't have to worry about that. And then obviously I have my savings account somewhere else for those emergencies in case something wild happened, right? So that is how I tend to do it. Now there is someone, Cyrenice Pierce, one of my friends in the finance space. She does the high five banking method. I would go to her to really break down how her system works. I like that even better. And it's something I've done, but she just broke it down in a way that I wish I would have thought of. But she does 5 different bank accounts and how she splits it up. So I'll try and find her information and link it below. But that is even better. And that is how people who get from the beginning levels get to those higher levels. Because a lot of people want to become millionaires, make generational wealth and do all that type of stuff. But we always don't know how to get there. We can all get to the training wheel space, but how do we get from point A to point B? And a lot of people who teach finance sometimes always start at that level, but don't really what's that next space? I've already been there, right? And now I'm on the other side of it and can tell you now it's the automation piece, because once you hit that decision fatigue, that's when things start to fall apart. I can tell you from experience as a parent, person with a job, and person who has a lot of different responsibilities. It is tough trying to do all that stuff, and then also trying to make a whole bunch of important financial decisions. Ain't nobody got time for that, right? And it can be very difficult and very daunting to do all that stuff and pay off all your debt. I don't do none of that. I sit down and make sure all that stuff is automated. When I paid off all my student loans, do you really think I sat down and said, this is how much I need to, in an Excel sheet, and say, this is how much I need to pay off? No. I sat down and planned it, and automated it, and never had to see it again. And then when I check the calendar, say it's supposed to be paid off on this date, I go check, it's paid off, we're good to go. That means I have more time to spend with y'all doing this, right? And also spend more time with the kids, vacations, and all of those things. So you have to make sure your stuff is automated. So you can start, if you're really trying to cut down your expenses, you're good. I think you can go with this system until you get to a good equilibrium, and then you can keep moving. But most importantly, you've got to get out of the decision fatigue space, because I know how much that can weigh on you, especially in a time where it feels like things are growing in expense or becoming more expensive each and every day. It's hard. It is hard. Automation is one of the ways to get out of it. But when we are talking about, ways to avoid bad advice and get better advice, there are two other things that I would recommend to you. So one, don't forget that we have a few more books that I am going to sign. We had 8 yesterday. We down to 7. I'm shipping these books off every Saturday, so I can just go and take them to UPS at one time. I'm not driving to UPS every day. I'm sorry. Okay, so I think it's like 3 to 4 days. So if I ship them on Saturday, they should get to y'all every Thursday or so. So on Thursdays is when I would expect these books, according to UPS, is what I would do. And it's a federal holiday today. Today's Juneteenth. So I know I got at least one to go in California. The link will be right here. If you hit a 404 error by clicking the link, that means I'm gone. The books are gone. Okay? So make sure that you get yours where you can. Once I sign them and I ship them, that's it. There will be no more. You will never see another signed copy unless the people who have one sell one, or you happen to find one in your local bookstore right now, which I do not think exist. The signed copies I know were in Tulsa were sold in like 2021. So I don't know. But I will say this, when it comes to spotting good and bad advice, you do need a certain set of skills. I did break down ways to spot bad financial advice and how to really spot who's real and who's not. Okay, so if you want to know how to spot bad financial advice and where all this bad financial advice does come from, you want to check out this video right here.